Kerberos, named for the three-headed dog that guarded the underworld in Greek mythology, is an authentication system that allows centralized management and is often used for single sign-on applications because it grants users a ticket that can be used to authenticate supported services, rather than requiring a password to log in all the time. As with LDAP, a correct Kerberos setup takes a lot of planning and preparation, and that's a topic for a different course. In this video, we'll set up a Kerberos server, or KDC, a key distribution center, using very basic settings, so we can then use a client to connect to it. And then we'll see how to use Kerberos to allow users to log into machines. First, we'll give ourselves a host name, which in a production setup you'd want to do with your DNS servers, but here we'll just take care of that in the hosts file with nano etc hosts. And I'll add 127.0.0.1, and we'll call our server kdc.example.com. And then I'll install the software that we need to run and administer a KDC with apt install krb5 kdc and krb5 admin server. During the configuration, I need to specify the realm, and in this case it's going to be example.com. The name of the Kerberos realm needs to be in capital letters. Then I'll enter the name of the server, kdc.example.com. Again, I'll put in kdc.example.com, and then I'll choose OK. Then I'll run krb5 underscore new realm to create our example.com realm. I'll enter a master key for the KDC database. Next, I'll use the kadmin.local command here on the KDC server to add a user that I want to manage centrally. I'll use the command add princ and type the name Pat. Users and services that we create information for in Kerberos are called principals. I'll set a password for this user and re-enter it, and then I'll exit kadmin. Okay, I've made a principal and set a password. Again, this is a really bare-bones example. Normally, you might have hundreds or thousands of principals in the database for a KDC, or you might import them or store them in something like LDAP. But we have a principal set up and KDC is running, so let's configure what a client needs to connect to it. Usually, a Kerberos client will be a separate machine from the KDC, but it doesn't have to be. Let's add the client software and configuration here with apt install krb5 user and krb5 config if they're not already installed. And then we'll go through the setup process with dpackage reconfigure krb5 config. Here on the client, I'll need to specify the Kerberos realm, in my case, example.com. And this creates the file etc krb5.conf, which, depending on your setup, may need some minor changes. Or if you're deploying many systems with some automation tools, you can generate and push this file with those tools to configure many machines at the same time. Let's check that we can communicate with the KDC with kinit-p for principal, and then our user, pat@example.com. I'll type this principal's password, which initializes the Kerberos session. It reaches out to the server and asks for a TGT, or a ticket granting ticket, which is used to refresh the Kerberos ticket periodically. That worked, and I can list out the details of my ticket with klist. We can log into the server, but there's a few more steps we need to take to allow Kerberos principals to log into the local system. First, we need a user on the system that corresponds with the Kerberos principal, or on an LDAP setup, I'd need to create a user in LDAP. You could do that with add user Pat, but on my system, this user already exists. In order to let someone log in, the system needs an account for them to use, but our password and the activation of the user's account will be managed by Kerberos. That user will map onto the local user when they log in. And then we need to add support for PAM in our Kerberized user with apt install libpam krb5. Which, as we can see, adds Kerberos into our PAM files so we don't have to do it manually. I'll switch to a new console with Ctrl-Alt-F4, and I'll log in as our Kerberos user. There we go. And I can take a look at my ticket and see that it's valid. As long as the Kerberos server is running and says we can log in, then we can log in. And if this user changes their password, it changes the Kerberos password, so they would be able to use the same password on any system that's set up for your KDC. Of course, there are other considerations you need to plan for in an environment like that. You may want to set up users with server-based home folders over NFS or something. And you may want to look into caching credentials in case users are on mobile or your KDC is, for whatever reason, not always available. You can do that with the libpam-ccreds package. If you're interested in Kerberos, I encourage you to learn more about it and experiment with it in a lab setting.